Welcome to the Total Acre podcast. I'm your host, C.R. Siebold. This podcast is all about helping growers unlock their potential. We aim to bring listeners agronomic insights, valuable educational interviews, real-world strategies that optimize yield and maximize ROI. This show is going to explore innovative practices, creative strategies, and breakthrough products with people that are shaping the industry, all through engaging and inspiring stories. Who better to learn from than the legendary world champion David Hula, Randy Dowdy, and Alex Harrell? Because in farming and in life, iron always sharpens iron. And the best way to grow or get better is to continually be learning, networking with peers, have access to industry leaders, and the tools, tips, and tricks, and overall quality of information. Knowledge is power. Tune in, hit play. Let's unlock your farm's potential together. Hey y'all, Chad Siebold here with Total Acre, the Total Acre podcast. We got some really interesting guests today. Galynn Beer and Trey Cutts, probably the coolest names in agriculture. I don't know about coolest people, but coolest names anyways, right?
Hey, if they're cool names, they're cool people. Let's just go with it.
All right, I'll go with that. Trey? What was he like Dr.
Like
Trey?
Or a comic strip, Cutts and Beer.
Well, it's better to be legendary and unforgettable. If you've got that name, you just got to follow it up. Now, don't screw this up, guys.
It's Friday,
so.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you guys joining me. I think there's some interesting things that, specifically with your company that I think is pretty interesting. But then, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the chitosan-based products and some of the things that we'll get into that. But as a company, kind of a sweet little background too. Maybe who wants to tackle that? Trey, hit it up.
Yeah. So,
Tidal Grow. What a name.
Tidal Grow. Yeah. So Galynn and I, have recently joined the company as we're in a pretty steep growth trajectory. But interestingly, our founders come from the Alaskan crab boat fishing industry. So true entrepreneurs that saw a really big problem in their industry was, there was just massive amounts of waste coming out of the crabbing industry, going into landfills, or going back to the ocean and polluting the environment. So really like the genesis of the company started back from solving, a real problem. It's kind of like the oil and gas industry, right? They figured out how to basically extract and utilize every molecule of oil that comes out of the ground just because it's such a valuable resource. Sure. Interestingly, in the crabbing industry, there's also a valuable resource called chitin, which is the second most abundant biopolymer on the planet behind cellulose. And there's a unique process that you can essentially put chitin into that breaks down the molecule in a unique way to where it finishes up with a very versatile monomer chain called chitosan.
Trey, I got to tell you, man, you went from straight up, here's my company, into the weeds with the product, brother. I love it. But
I'm so excited. You let me loose, and there I went.
Well, so Galynn, I'm going to make fun of his PhD. We call that in Oklahoma post hole digger degrees, right?
I've dug plenty of post holes, so
that's right. So you have a PhD as well?
You got to earn calluses in the state of Oklahoma.
That's right. Well, Trey, I'm going to jump back over to Galynn here in just a second. But, when you talk about a company background in the fisherman industry, the chitosan-based products, and if I'm saying it wrong, you tell me, but chitosan-based products, I look at it as like a DDG, right? So if you look at corn processed ethanol, you have a DDG that you can feed. You're just taking that DDG, which is chitosan-based products, or chitosan that's, basically put into your products. Galynn, I know you're newer into this business, but have been in the game forever for agriculture. What excites you about joining the team here at Tidal Grow?
Yeah,
and it's Tidal Grow Agriscience, by the way.
Yeah. So, the thing that excited me was the technology that, does, to Trey's point, the chitosan, it can be used in so many ways in ag. I think the thing that is really intriguing about it is chitosan actually, when it's applied to crops, will stimulate the crop's natural immune system. And so then you can look at that and say, wow, there are a million ways on that acre to help keep that plant healthy. And I think, I said to someone yesterday, Chad, I said, when I grew up, if someone would have said anything with the, letters bio in it or regenerative or anything like that, his blood pressure would spike. And I think, it's just a function. We didn't want anyone telling us how to do our job. And it feels like when you talk about regenerative or biostimulant, sometimes you feel like that's a cost burden without an offsetting revenue income. And what excited me about this is that's not how it is. I mean, the chitosan can be used in a way to offset that some costs and
Sure.
to help that to equip that crop to do better without some of the synthetic methods. We're not eliminating them, but we can reduce some of the synthetic products that we use out there.
Plays nicely with others for sure. Now, Trey, when you start kind of hearing some of the things he just talked about, as soon as you hear that word bio, whether it's biostimulant or biologicals, that is completely, there's things out there that people get misconceptions within. I think you're going to probably tell us at some point you are absolutely not a biological.
That's right.
Is now the time. But when you hear about biostimulants, that's an older term, but it's something now that we as producers have started to realize we need within our operations. And I'm going to summarize this, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Trey. Dr. Trey, that's not Dr. Dre, by the way, for those of you listening, right? Dr. Trey Cutts.
He can rap.
That's right. Well, you look at that, right? So now all of a sudden you're talking about plant or animal based products, right? And that's what a biostimulant, if you look at, the reoccurring how we grow things, there's stuff in our soils that have biostimulants every day, all day. Yeah. It's just a matter of taking something, recycling or upcycling, taking something that maybe, like you said, was out kind of destroying, right? Now bringing things back to life. So Dr. Trey, help me out.
Well, I'll build on something Galynn just said, right? Because the biostimulant industry is quite broad, right? And
sure,
there's lots of, I think, unique benefits that biostimulants provide, but sometimes it can be, maybe not very descriptive or not very exact, right? You're looking at different abiotic stresses and responses that are difficult to predict in biological systems. What I think is unique around our chitosan-based solutions is we're able to actually develop a molecule where we can go after targeted efficacy in either a fungicide context or nematicide context. So even though we're in the bio space, it's much more akin to like traditional actives that we think of where, we know we're trying to maybe solve a specific pest problem and we're deploying an input to go take care of that to preserve our yield and ROI. And that's what excited me about Tidal Grow is we're capitalizing on the bio space because we're naturally derived, but we're able to really put a science-based approach and come out with targeted efficacy and, really results that are consistent and predictable.
Trey, I love it, right? And I'm going to go back to you, Galynn, here, because when you start talking the science, it really meets the real world in agronomy when we start talking about producers. And I know you have seed treatments, foliar sprays, kind of soil amendments. There's probably a couple other I'm missing there, but us within Total Acre, I know that you work really closely with Brian Maddox and Bryce America. What specifically are you working with Total Acre on running trials with our growers this year?
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and let Trey answer that because he did set up the trials. I threw some suggestions his way, but he's the one that actually is responsible for that.
Cool. Trey?
Well, it's just a matter of, Tidal Grow has done a lot of work as our company's developed and, lab-based testing, in vitro-based testing to understand what efficacy we're getting, what modes of action are happening. And we're just at a stage in the game and the growth of our company. Like it's time to now, develop our real world agronomic recommendations, make sure that we're understanding of different cropping situations or different environments. And that's what, Total Acre is, really there to help us do. Not only give us a real world environment, but also that peer-to-peer network. So, we can learn from all of you as well. And so, that only in the end, helps to benefit farmers. So we have, a few locations around the U.S. with some of the Total Acre network doing just that, honing in on what is their specific practice and problem. How do we best fit in with that? And then just really, strengthening our recommendations going forward.
Trey, I know when you start looking at the products, you've been around since 2015. So you've been in the marketplace. We appreciate you coming into Total Acre and letting our growers kind of play with the product. Galynn, you're no stranger to Total Acre. You've been within that group. You know a lot of the members and have worked really closely with them. What is it that you like working on the Total Acre side of things?
Yeah, we like when we work with Total Acre, we feel like we're getting direct market feedback. In ag, you can't really do your kind of your market group feedback that you might do in some industries. Our best market feedback is with folks like you because, that grower is going to come up to our booth when we're in San Antonio this year, and they're going to go, it worked. It didn't work. It was inconvenient for me to use. I loved using it. Like every one of those comments will pay dividends for us because that's our avenue to constant improvements.
Trey, I used to think that people like to talk to you because of your last name, right? They thought maybe it brought some fringe benefits, but you are a pretty intelligent guy outside of just your last name. I'm gonna throw that out there.
Yeah.
But it is cool to see the interaction. And Galynn, we've known each other for a while now, and most of the producers in the group, right? Not every producer is built the same way within Total Acre. Brian really kind of finds this finite group and cuts down to 150 growers that say, hey, these are our folks that are willing to provide that feedback. And listen, Trey, you may not like it, but some of these guys will challenge you, right? And that is the thing that I think what Galynn's talking about is going to make you better. Trey, talk about consistency, right? Because when you talk about a product that's coming from an animal, right, a crustacean, and then getting consistency back into the product, because that's kind of what Galynn's, like when he's getting that feedback, it worked last year and I had phenomenal results. And now this year, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Are you ready for that challenge?
Absolutely. And, going back to, our founders and what they actually pioneered in our manufacturing method, we have the world's first and only, not only green manufacturing method, but a proprietary way to isolate and control for what character of chitosan that we're actually manufacturing. So after we do a process that's more akin to, synthetic molecule development, we, identify the precise molecular weights and orientation of that molecule that we want to get, say, fusarium control or certain nematode control. And then we have the manufacturing in-house to back up and produce that in a very consistent way.
Well, Trey, help me if I'm going down a wrong path, but we've got a couple different folks that I've worked with in the past that talks about fractionation, right? It's literally, and I look at it, and this is probably the wrong analogy, but it's kind of like you're going to a cocktail party and that bag of nuts that's there, and you only want the cashews, right? Somehow or another, you're able to take out of the crustaceans or out of the chitosan-based products. You can find the good stuff that you're wanting to actually create a product to, like you said, whether it's a nematode type product. Is that the simple layman terms that farmer grade?
That's a great way to think about it, right? And what we get excited about is Tidal Grow has the only manufacturing process like that in the world. And so,
cool.
Even though chitosan itself is not a new molecule, the way we produce it and the way we bring products to market is truly unique. And we feel is a step change and a revolution in what chitosan can do in agriculture.
Sustainable material, right? It's not going away anytime soon. It's just how we use it, how you can manufacture it cleaner, better. So when you talk about sustainability, I'm sure there's some really nice incentives out there. When you talk about green manufacturing, this product's still got to work, Galynn, right?
It's got to work. I mean, we're all waiting to see how the carbon market ends up, playing out. How complicated is it to participate in things like that? But let's hope that does materialize. Let's set it aside for a second. The immediate recognition of profit that a farmer has is that grain coming into that bin. Obviously, price factors into that, but unfortunately, Trey and I have nothing to do with the price. So all we can do is help more grain come into the bin, and then make sure that we're recommending it in a way that the revenue side beats out the cost side. But for growers, that some of these products have had that inconsistency, and to Trey's points that he's made a couple times is that's where we've separated ourselves, is that we're fortunate to have someone on staff that understands if you're going to use chitosan with a fungicide, that should be differently than if you're using chitosan with a foliar application. We want to remove that inconsistency for the farmer because you can't build a stable market with inconsistency. We want that time over time result.
Sure. Step one's production, right? Getting that consistent production, obviously, since 2015, perfecting that process. I do like, when it comes down to the Total Acre sides, and I know you've worked with Brian fairly heavily, Galynn in the past, and this year, obviously, and then Trey, I know you've been introduced. This is our first year working with you in that regard. But when you hear Brian and some of the things that he talks about and the protocols that you're putting in play, it's fairly complex, right? So the producers within Total Acre, it's not like say it's, set it and spray it and walk away. Specific criteria that you look to kind of hit for benchmarks along the way, and that's what makes the product, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned being challenged, right? And that is what it's all about, right? It's understanding not only what is a unique farmer situation or protocol. The Total Acre guys are at the top of their game, and so it's such an excellent way to like sharpen our go to market and to ensure that growers writ large get the benefit of the product and those unique programs. So yeah, it's not a traditional like here's the rate, here's the timing, please fit this into a T. It's like what are the problems that Brian's trying to solve, and how can we look at it in the right way that that is going to make sense at the end of the day, not just a protocol.
So when you talk about fertility, and nutrients, we're talking about enhanced ability for a nutrient to be absorbed or taken in by the plant, right? Number one. But I know when you're talking about seed treatment and timing, and some of the other different things, when you're talking about pest management, you're talking about crop protection. I mean, it can't do everything every time, but if it pairs nicely with others, Galynn, what do you like, or what are you seeing?
That's just it. The grower's going to have the option to say, hey, I would take a product like Spectra and put it with my fungicide, because what Spectra does is, it has that biostimulant activity to help offset any negatives from something like tar spot or something that might be on that corn plant. Plus, they've also put the synthetic version out there to fight that. So what that means is the efforts of those two products together are multiplied. Now, I'm a realist and I'm looking at where ag is this year. They're also going to say, can I reduce my fungicide? We've actually done those tests. And yes, you can pull back some of that fungicide, because we know that chitosan in that application is going to help along with that fungicide. So I think as you approach every year, no 2 years are going to be created the same. And I think some years we're going to be an add-on because the farmer says, I just want to throw you in there with the tank because I see positives. In other years, he's going to say, okay, how can we like maximize that dollar? Maybe I pull back the fungicide just a little bit and add your product into it. So, I mean, we have to be adaptable to that sort of climate. We can't only succeed in the years where corn prices are $8.
Sure. Well, Galynn, and I think you know this too, Trey, but like Hula's a big fungicide guy, 2 shots, right? He's a big Valtima guy. I'm not trying to drop names, but BASF's going to call you up, Galynn, and say, well, we don't want anybody to go half rate. But if a guy can, in these times, right, if a guy can actually be fully optimized with utilizing products to maybe split rate that, go half rates, it's an interesting time, right, to be able to maximize ROIs.
And I'm not sure. I mean, I hear you on, if I were a sales rep getting a commission from Bayer or someone like that, that would probably be my first response. But I do think the industry, industries evolve. Rewind 10 years, that for sure is the counterpoint. Today, I think we realize that our consumer seems. Some people think their food's born on the shelf of Walmart, and yet it feels like we have 300 million eyes on us every time we're going to the field. And right. I do think no matter what you're selling in this market, you do realize that in today's information age of Twitter and TikTok, that you're under the microscope, and anything you can do to kind of show that consumer we're taking steps in the right direction. I think that's a positive for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say that tongue in cheek because if you look at it, right, have more nutrient dense foods, right, healthier ecosystem for us, everything that we eat, right, we look at the water that we consume, right, all these different fertility issues that may be high nitrates in our water in the state of Nebraska, right? So maybe talk about that, Trey, a little bit. I know when you talk about biofertilizers, that's kind of a hot button, I guess, a little bit, right? And then, like, I guess it's really an alternative fertilizer, right? Is really what you're looking at with the chitosan-based. So I know we jumped directly from, the fungicide application, but the fertility piece, I don't think we can ignore that.
Yeah, that's right. No, and not to confuse the listeners, right? Like chitosan is very versatile, but you're talking about different chitosan molecules that fit into different use cases, whether that's nutrition or crop protection. So those are going to be like totally different product development processes, totally different chitosan molecules. But it just goes to show how versatile it is, right? And what
Sure.
we can utilize it for. And also part of our process is we use every bit of that waste stream coming in. And so what we don't use for the actual chitosan polymer, we use for upcycled, enhanced bionutritional fertilizers as well. So when you mention biofertilizers, that's where our product line is coming from. But at the end of the day, right, it's about nitrogen use efficiency. So
Sure.
you think, of course, I'll hit on the 4 R's, right? It's right timing, right rate, right placement, but the right source, right? So if you're getting the right source at the right time, those are some of the two biggest elements that you can look at, right? How do you most efficiently get that nitrogen into the plant when it needs it? And biofertilizers just simply have a place for that, right? They can be super efficient. They can cause a knock-on effect in that soil from nutrient cycling. So it's not just about the nitrogen; it's about your overall nutrient balance and availability. So it just really helps you bring more tools to the table from a holistic agronomy standpoint.
What we like,
hitting the hammer with single nutrients, right?
100%. And what we like, and I'll put Maddox in this term too, right? Like we have quite a few different conversations around what products are in the marketplace, what we're working with, obviously, but we like the biostimulant market, right? But the biostimulant market, not everything's created equally, right? I think what you talked about right there, and how those products are formulated and what products go into those, back to that bowl of nuts, right? Your cashews or maybe your fungicide, and your almonds or maybe your biofertilizers, for ones that are abusing that. So I'm not going to throw any names out there, but biostimulants are not all created equally. So maybe just talk a little bit high level about that, Trey. What, when he talks about consistency and what products and kind of the formulation behind the products that you're building, why should we believe what Tidal Grow is doing is the next level?
That's a really good question. Well, to talk at a high level, I'm thinking of a graphic I just saw today where it's like this histogram of, I don't know, 300 different biostimulant or biological companies, right? And there's all these different product classes all over the place, and it's super confusing, right?
Sure.
A biological can be a biostimulant, but a biostimulant's not necessarily a live biological,
right?
And so forth and so on.
And somewhere the farmer has to delineate between and then figure it out, right?
Yeah. So it all comes down to a science-based approach, right? It's, you got to look at the data and understand when, you see third-party data or data coming from, groups like yours that is really going to give it, the challenged look at it. I think that's really important. And understand you're not going to get 100% win rate all the time.
Sure.
We're dealing with complex biological systems, right? So one, red flag is, if it works all the time, well, that's, again, that's probably a bit disingenuous. But
Sure.
How do we, ensure success, the majority of the time, 70, 80% is a really good win rate in ag. So looking for those types of win rates, on like, scale types of data is a really good way to start.
Well, Galynn, I know you've been in the market when we haven't won before, and having those tough conversations with Maddox or even the grower, but I will say one of the things that's been fun working with you on is understanding that if it doesn't work, not if you're in a protocol and something that in that protocol didn't work, being exposed like that's tough, right? Because you're like, oh man, right? but being able to work with folks, correct the problem, understand what didn't work, right? It's always fun when everybody's got 10 bushels and they can talk about it, and everybody can be a great marketer then, right? But what happens on the other side of that, Galynn? You do a really good job with that. Maybe talk through us.
Yeah, you did. To your point, Chad, you feel vulnerable sometimes because you're out there in a real world situation. And, we're there at the Total Acre event, and you see someone coming up, and you're trying to read their face. Is this good or bad?
Yeah.
The thing is we need both, and I think
Sure.
that's one reason that we work with you guys. I think
Right.
I think what I do love about working through Brian with growers is once in a while you get someone that comes up and goes, "Hey, you know what I saw?" And it's something that the product might not have been intended for. It's like those videos you see, the 1,000 uses of Coca-Cola or whatever. I mean, like chitosan is still pretty young in mainstream agriculture. We as a company probably can't even foresee all the ways that will be utilized. So some of that, hey, I never thought of using it that way. I will have Trey put it out that way next year and we'll watch it. But for us, I think we have to be realists, that as Trey said, there's a lot of variables that go into ag. We're not going to succeed 100% of the time. We are going to hold ourselves to a pretty good standard, though, because consistency is key. And we don't want to be the guy that's going, hey, you got a 50-50 shot of it working. We are going to expect better than that.
Sure. This is why I like talking to you guys. You kind of have the yin and yang of a business, right? So you got the sales side with Galynn. I think you got some fancy title like global whiz bang boom national manager sales, right? And then Dr. Trey. But all joking aside, that is what, right? Like when you guys can sit down at a table and you can say, hey, don't sell it because it's a challenge here. And Trey, you're, on the other side of it, Galynn, you're like, we need it. Or, hey, farmers are wanting this. I think that is the constant battle that you probably have internally behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, everything works in a clinical situation. Like in that sterile lab situation, you can manipulate anything to work 100% of the time. Unfortunately, farmers don't operate that way. I don't, so sure. They don't.
VP of Global Sales, Galynn, I'll get it right. But
right.
When you talk about global, I mean, that's the next chapter, right? So you talk about early on, you talked about growth. Here in North America, you guys are doing some really cool stuff. What's next on the agenda? I'll let either one of you tackle that. When it talks, we're talking the global sales VP, so we should probably talk what's on the agenda.
Yeah. So we are. I mean, the world is our canvas, Chad. We are going to go to the places that we fit. That we feel like we can bring some value. And, where we can overcome barriers. I mean, once you get out of the U.S., obviously you can have some barriers that can prevent some things. A lot of them are regulatory. So, you have to work through those, or those are a little more cumbersome in some areas. But I will say, in the U.S., where we're getting good traction now, you go to other countries, they don't have the resource of a dry fertilizer 15 miles away and a million-gallon UAN tank, and we're resource blessed in the US. And so I think one thing that helps us if we look out globally is to go to areas where the chitosan might even carry greater value than it does here, because it might have to compensate for a lack of resources. And the guy that is great at manipulating our molecule, Dr. Ramesh, is from India, and he put this stuff through its paces. The reason our products are as refined and can work as good as they can is because necessity's the mother of innovation, and he took advantage of it in India and then brought that expertise over here for us.
I mean, and really at the core, again, of our founder's philosophy is to make a global systemic impact. And you're exactly right. Those seafood waste streams are present all over the world, but the agricultural needs are also present all over the world. So, while we're, have a benefit of being made in the USA today, we have the, potential to have, regional production and regional formulation so that we can not only bring these products and scale globally, we can do it, in a really cost-effective way. So some really exciting times ahead.
I think you had a play on words I missed. Did you say the world is my oyster? Is that what you said? Is that what was that?
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's
Yeah,
that's
let's
where
use
he's
it that way. I think I said the world is my canvas, but I'm
Hey,
not a good painter, so it's probably better if it's an oyster.
corny dad jokes, right? We'll go
That's
with
right.
it. But
That's right.
at the end of the day, though, it would be cool. I want to talk a little bit more about the chitosan technology, because if you see CHTIN, right? CHITIN,
TON.
chitin,
Oh,
right?
chitin. Yeah.
Chitin is
C8.
what that is. So if you're looking at stuff and you're looking at a jug, I'm spelled again here, CHITIN, chitin. If you're looking at an active ingredient or an ingredient on a jug that is chitin, it's probably coming from you guys. Anybody else doing it?
There's some out there, but I'll clarify just a bit. Chitin is the first derivative, right? You
Okay.
actually want to go through that deacetylation process to get chitosan.
Mm.
And so that's an important qualification, because that process does happen naturally, but maybe only 5% of the time, because you need a certain enzyme to do it, and you're not controlling for the eventual molecule that comes out.
Makes sense.
So, and that's, I think that's why we want to educate, the industry as well, because you'll see on the label is just chitosan, right?
Sure.
So it's really important to look at the data and the efficacy, because the label is not going to necessarily say which molecule or which variant is in there. Again, that's proprietary as well.
Sure.
But the data and the outcomes then become hugely important to make sure to evaluate.
Well, the reason I bring that up is you guys have been around a lot of different products. I know, Galynn, you have as well. When you look at like a biological product, it'll say what type of bacteria and a percentage of a bacteria. And it gets, well, I've got that one too. And I've got it gets a little confusing. It was cool for you to be able to kind of play that out, Trey, because, when they see that, knowing that it's, how it's built is different, I guess is something, I guess, as you're looking at biostimulants with chitosan-based products. Let's back up a little bit here, because, when you start looking at soil health, crop health, when you look at the opportunity to be able to trigger more plant available nutrients, right? So now we're back in North America. We're sitting on a corn farm. I've got, my nitrogen use efficiency is pretty dialed in. I'm sitting mid-season, about tassel time, right, Galynn, around here.
Yes.
What's a product that guys are going to be looking at? Well, we're starting to look at fungicides, right? We're looking at, is that an opportunity for us? What's a product we should be looking at?
Trey, I will let you go. Spectra is at the top of my list, so we will soon see if Trey agrees with that.
Yeah, so as we approach fungicide timing, looking at our chitosan-based fungicide formulation of Spectra is a really good option here in the short term to bring another mode of action to the table for different pathology control. But if we talk about, looking at our soil nutrients and possibly, what do we do to prepare ourselves even for next season, right? As we come to harvest and post-harvest, that's where using our bionutrition products, Oceanic and CFOS, either in a burn down program or a fall soil primer program, to really activate those soil microbes, get them charged up before dormancy, but also help with residue breakdown in some of the northern latitudes where, those high seed-to-N ratio crops, really cause us problems. So there's a couple different things, even though we're in kind of the middle of the season, to one, finish off strong, but also be looking at what can we do in the fall to make sure that we kickstart ourselves in the spring with healthy soils and ideal planting conditions.
I like it. Trey, we've talked about a lot of different things here. Galynn, as you start looking at the sales season, we're already in mid-season. You're already starting to ramp up for the fall sales season. We've tried to educate a little bit here, but as you're looking for maybe the one or two things that you're going to want to leave somebody with today, Galynn, as they're looking at opportunities to work with you, what's one of the one main things you want to leave them with?
Well, you're making me boil it down to one, but that's good. That's
one
good.
and a half. I'll give you 1.5.
Yeah. No, I think the thing, I'm gonna make it specific to this year, Chad. Okay, so obviously I could go a chitin route with this or whatever, but I'll tell you what I'm gonna say that we're hypersensitive to this year is the disparity between crop nutrient inputs and the price of corn. And so in our book, we're going to try to make it as painless as possible or as easy as possible for the grower to get off to a good start next year. Trey talked about those residue, those products that will help decompose that residue. We're going to have a program that actually will allow a guy to start that process and start that recycling of those nutrients ASAP, but we're going to kick that payment into next year for him, because a farmer coming up on harvest this year, I think the last thing he wants someone doing is bugging him for money this fall. He's going to be on the edge of a seat as is. So we're going to try to accommodate that through programs. And rather than get into the details of that here, whenever we get closer to harvest, our sales reps will be out there kind of letting folks know what those opportunities are.
That's actually one of the things as you start looking at things, as things tighten, right? Working with companies, and David actually is going to be in a unique situation at Farm Progress this year where some of his partners have recognized him and are going to recognize him. But not all the time is it easy to work with a vendor or a partner, right? Or a manufacturer. The easier you can make it, Galynn, to work with producers, as you know, man, it's everything, especially in times like now. Dr. Trey Cutts, what's the one thing you want to leave them with? Agronomically, obviously, a lot of the knowledge that you've kind of blessed us with here today, is there one or two things? How do you make it easy on us?
Bio doesn't have to mean sacrificing efficacy, right? And I think where the industry is going with understanding formulations and what growers expect from data and outcomes, I really think the industry is going towards a really good place to where we can now complement traditional programs with bio-based approaches. Maybe that's a biological, but for us, it's more of a biopolymer molecule approach that happens to be naturally derived, that we can now bring another mode of action to the table to either preserve the chemistries that we have on the market today or give growers other options.
Trey, access to information, right? So you kind of referenced it. Growers are very intelligent, right? And they've become just very thirsty for information, right? So access to information, continuing to educate the marketplace is my challenge back to you two. Continue to do that because there is a thirst out there. It is hard to do though, right? It takes some time, but if you can kind of push to the side sales targets and push education, I think it's everything, guys. I appreciate you both coming in here today and letting me kind of heckle you a little bit. It's been fun. I didn't even say anything about Oklahoma, Galynn. So
I know because when I was in school, we dominated Nebraska. So
Nebraska.
You weren't going to bring that up. I knew it.
And Trey, I know you're in Alabama, so you're kind of like Roll Tide. You got the A. You don't even have an A in the background there. Are you a Bama guy?
No, there might be a Georgia G back there on Cottonville. So
SEC. Come on, you guys are all SEC now.
We are.
Come back to the good life. Well, guys, I appreciate it. It's been fun. If there's something I can help with, let me know. Otherwise, really appreciate what you're doing.
Chad, we appreciate you having us on today. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to kind of explain what we do and who we are.
Check them out, guys. Thanks, guys.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in today to this episode of the Total Acre podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed it, you liked the conversation, be sure to subscribe. You know the drill. Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Go give us a click, give us a like. Until next time, though, keep pushing forward. We hope that you found something unique, something powerful here that might help you unlock your farm's potential. We look forward to seeing you next week. Be safe. Talk more here soon on the next Total Acre podcast.